Hey, so hi, good morning everyone. I am Soofrina from the DAS, and today my session is about instructional tech integration models. Now, if this term is really very, sounds very alien to you, right? Just relax, okay? So basically, right, what it means is how we integrate technology in the classroom and what are the guiding models that kind of make the teacher an informed instructional designer. Now, all these jargons, I will be explaining it to you in more practical sense. So just bear with me for a while. Yeah, so the agenda today is that I'll be introducing these models to you, and I will be showing you how instructional design is based on or linked to these models. And I will also give you some examples, some video examples of EdTech or instructional designs in action. So first, let's look at the models. Now, this part is going to be a little bit theoretical, but I'll make it really swift and fast, so there is less agonizing for some of you here. But before I get into the models, right, can I just get a show of hands, like how many of you are familiar with the term of instructional design? Okay, so, oh, that's great. Okay, so I think you have like, you have come to this session to get to know more about the models. That's great. And the rest of you, I presume, are parents or teachers, because I see a lot of familiar faces from the DAS. Okay, so, let's get started. So for my tech integration models, right, I'll be tapping on TPAC, SAMR, TIM, which is the Tech Integration Matrix, and last but not least, the Rigor Relevance Framework. So first one, TPAC. For those of you who mentioned that you are familiar with instructional design, I will also think that you would know TPAC. TPAC is the underlying framework that tells us that, an educator, okay, maybe I'll use the pointer from the screen so that all of you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so for teachers generally will have a very good pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge, okay? So even if you think about teachers from 20 or 30 years ago, thinking back of our school days, our teachers deliver content and they know how to deliver it to you. I mean, most of the time they may have used rote learning where they keep giving you worksheets to practice, okay, right or wrong, and then keep practicing, doing corrections and things like that. And of recently, this technological knowledge has gained a lot of importance. And so if you put the three types of knowledge together, which is what TPAC stands for, so T is for technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. So teachers are required to be experts, not say experts, but to have good competence in these three areas. All right, so let me just talk to you more about the overlapping areas. Okay, so earlier on I was telling you about teachers who are very good in pedagogical and content knowledge. So they kind of typically lie over here. And then this area covers technological and pedagogical content. So if this individual is purely an instructional designer, that means they design e-learning modules or they design activities for the students, they naturally kind of lie around here because they are not the content or the subject matter experts. Okay, their expertise is more on the appropriate use of technology and how it should be pedagogically, be run in the classroom. And the next group of people you might have is those who are very good with technology and content, but not really so much on pedagogy. But this part, I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly who or which group of people, but for theoretical purposes, that's the that's the third subgroup. And ultimately, we want educators or instructional designers or anyone related in the teaching field to have a good to have good competence in designing lesson materials with a good mix of these three knowledge, which is what this final or this very middle point is reflecting. So this is what the TPAC concept is. So Now we move on to the SAMR model. The SAMR model has 4 levels of tech integration. So earlier on, the TPAC was largely theory-based, and now we go on to the SAMR, which teachers may relate to a bit more. And why is that so? Yeah, so, and why is that so? Because it's pretty very simplified. It has just broken down the tech integration idea into 4 levels. First being the substitution. So you may imagine, I mean, typically students write compositions on a piece of paper with a pen or a pencil, and you have draft 1, draft 2, and then it either goes back and forth with the teacher or with a peer or things like that. Now, if you were to replicate this with some technology, but at the substitution level, it could be something like giving the student a typewriter, a keyboard, as in a PC with a keyboard, or an iPad with a digital keyboard, and asking the student to type out their composition, for example. Now, when you're doing this, right, there is, which is why on my screen it says, there is no functional change. You are just merely substituting, and that's that. All right, and for the second level is augmentation. So maybe this teacher has decided, okay, get the students to add some pictures or add some images or add some borders and things like that. So that is augmentation. So if you again see, it still has no functional change, but there's very little functional change, but it is still a tool for direct substitution. So the substitution and the augmentation levels, they lie on the level of enhancement on the SAMR model, all right? Then we go on to the next 2, which is, the third one is modification. So this time, the teacher may want to, do a bit of a collaborative activity, add other peers onto the same document. They are working on different paragraphs, or they are peer editing and the teacher is moderating, this kind of examples. So over here, there is significant task change. That means this activity may not be possible without the technology, right? So therefore, the integration of technology has become a lot more significant in achieving this task. And the last one, which is the highest, is redefinition. So maybe the teacher is like doing this Skype activity with an expert who's overseas or someone who is not physically contactable, and the students are doing an interview, doing some kind of activity, or they are even a webcam, they are using webcam to communicate with students in another classroom, in another school, somewhere far away, the other part of the world, things like that. All right, so these are the 4 generic levels that SAMR model tells teachers how well they are integrating technology into their lesson design. So when I say lesson design, that is instructional design, how you design your instruction, how it is delivered to your students, and things like that. So far we have covered TPAC and SAMR, quite fast, right? So it's going to finish, so no worry, as in this part of the theoretical part. And the third one is technology integration matrix. Now, okay, over here it looks a bit small, but let me see if I can make it a bit bigger. No, I'm not able to zoom out. But if you do a quick Google search, you will see a lot of clearer or more defined images. And there are many websites that explain this model too. So this tech integration matrix, it includes 5 interdependent characteristics of relevant teaching environments, which are active learning environment, constructive, goal-oriented, authentic, and collaborative environments, which the teachers can use for whichever activity that's appropriate. And this is measured against 5 levels of tech integration, which are entry level, adoption level, adaptation, infusion, and transformational. Yeah. So this matrix gives you different levels of tech integration for each applicable lesson activity type. maybe if you, maybe on your own time, if you go to the website, it gives you very specific examples to make it very clear. Like if you're doing this particular activity, then which part of the matrix you are, which cell of the matrix you are at, because you will have 25 different combinations. Okay, so I'm again going to move forward, but I'm going to now analyze for you, not say analyze, but to look at it in a more objective point of view, like objective perspective about this TPAC, SAMR, and tech integration model. These three models that I explained to you, right? Okay, so again, when we go back to the SAMR model, and I gave you some examples of direct substitution and etc. Depending on your tech competence or tech expertise, your level of augmentation will be different from my level of augmentation, right? So, and for some of our colleagues, maybe using Google Documents without collaboration, just as a direct typing tool, could be their augmentation. You know, there is no real right or wrong. Okay, so but what these models tell you is that it is very personal. It's largely based on your own interpretation. It's very subjective. Yeah, so it's really very subjective. So therefore, I would be looking at the rigor relevance framework. Now, what the rigor relevance framework does is that it compares, or rather it puts the knowledge taxonomy against the application model. So this gives the teacher, so largely the teacher will be having this something very similar to the Bloom's taxonomy. So it's a lot more specific. So what do I mean? Yeah, so again, it's not very clear because the words are very small. But if you go and read up on this, right? Yeah, so a lot of researchers have suggested that this could be a better guiding, this could provide better guidance to teachers than something like the SAMR or the TIM. Because I wouldn't include the TPAC, because TPAC is the whole, it's like the overarching theoretical basis. So this rigor relevance framework gives you verbs which teachers could be very familiar with because teachers largely use the Bloom's taxonomy. It puts the different activities on different quadrants, A, B, C, or D. And a teacher can move from A to B, then C to D, or A to C, then B to D, depending on how you want to move along the framework. Okay, why I say A to B and then C to D is if you are focusing, or if you're someone who's very comfortable with awareness, comprehension, and application level of the taxonomy, then if you intend to grow along that way horizontally, then if you are improving, as in if you are improving horizontally, then you'll be going from A to B, and then you may be working on C to D. But if you're someone who wants to, who generally does the entire taxonomy levels, but your application level is still largely in knowledge in one discipline or application within discipline, within one discipline within that two categories, then you would be going from A to C and then B to D. But then again, there is no real right or wrong. There is actually no right or wrong. Okay, because as an instructional designer, as a teacher, as an educator, you, or as a parent, you are in the best position to determine which instructional activity is most appropriate for the student for that time, based on the mood or based on the timing of the year and things like that. Okay, so I think we have come to the end of the theoretical part, and I hope it wasn't too boring. But now it's going to get a little bit better, okay? It's not so theoretical anymore, because I'm going to talk about instructional design with EdTech. So sorry, for those of you who are not too sure what EdTech is educational technologies. So we're coming back to instructional design in educational technology. So definition, instructional design is known as the analysis of learning needs. Okay, so an instructional designer would usually do a needs analysis to find out what is the actual expected what is the expected performance, and measure it against the actual performance and try to close that performance gap. Okay, so that's what an instructional designer does. So like I mentioned earlier, if you go back to the TPAC model, right, they are their technological content knowledge and their pedagogical content knowledge is usually very strong, because they are not really the content experts. So normally they would, in their work, they would be consulting the content expert who is the teacher or the school leader or someone who knows exactly what they want to teach. But how they deliver it to the student, that's the instructional design. But as teachers, as educators, we often wear many hats. We are teachers, we are adopting technology. We are also expected to know what are the 21st century skills required, because we are teaching 21st century learners. So we are also expected to be informally instructional designer without real training, but so this training part is what I will address later, like how we do it in the DAS. So so I think instructional designer I covered just now. Learning experience. Now this is something that is growing in importance in the area of education. Learning experience is an emerging discipline because it draws from other disciplines including experiential learning, cognitive psychology, interaction design, user experience design, and design thinking. So if you think that I'm just throwing jargons at you, it's actually not really. These are theories. These are learning theories, and so each of them come from different. Not say come from different perspectives, but each of them hold different functions. So an instructional designer would know when to use what and then justify it. But for a teacher who is not an instructional designer, but but still is designing lessons, right? It comes with practice. It comes from peer collaboration, like teacher to teacher, having group discussions, and things like that. Educational technology, yeah, so educational technology I did address just now. But coming back to learning experience, this is what all these game-based learning, e-learning, blended learning, yeah, all these guys, all these terms, they are actually basing their approaches on learning experience, because at the end of the day, when you want your instructional package, okay, the activities to appeal to the learner, and you want the learner to benefit from it, then one of the key things in your design would be the focus on learning experience. So speaking of that, then I talk about blended learning. So many of us have heard blended learning. We have heard about e-learning and things like that. So what really is blended learning? Blended learning, I call it, is a mixture of the bricks and the clicks. So bricks, which are for example, we have chairs, we have tables, we have ceiling-mounted projectors and things like that. And we have the clicks, which are the softwares, the PowerPoint slides, the computer, and things like that. So when these two things come together, you have a blended learning approach. So typically in schools, when they say blended learning, that means for some lessons you are coming for face-to-face instruction with the professor or with the teacher, and some other days you can be at home doing e-learning modules. All right. So and how is this different from e-learning? Well, it's not very different. Blended learning just means that you have e-learning included into the instructional package. So some of the days you have face-to-face, you have group work, and some of the days you can just do mobile learning or learn from home. Synchronous and asynchronous online discussions, also known as AOD or AOD or SOD. Okay, so what is synchronous? What is asynchronous? I'm sure many of you have seen Facebook posts, right? I mean, there are so many news going on Facebook, and many people comment. There are like so many comments. And then as you are browsing, you read the comments, and if you think you want to post something, you add on to the comments. Now that is asynchronous. Okay, it's asynchronous because there is no time limit. It's open. You can post your comments anytime, and anybody can reply to you at any point of time. All right, that is asynchronous. Synchronous is when the teacher or the professor or a moderator or a forum manager has put a start time and an end time to it, and everybody is like there at that same time, logging in from different places. okay, and then putting in their comments and discussing about something. That's synchronous, asynchronous online discussions. It's gaining much popularity with a lot of people, a lot of institutions building learning management systems, LMS, right? Virtual reality, I'm pretty sure many of you have heard of virtual reality. It shouldn't be that alien a term, but I'm just going to, I think, yeah, I just have a very quick video on virtual reality.
You could pick anywhere in the world that you'd want to go. Where would you want to go?
I would like to go to the moon. Thailand, ancient Greece.
India, to Nigeria, my homeland.
One or maybe all of the 7 wonders of the world. When you explore different places, you have the chance to actually learn something new.
You want to be able to show the kids that there's something outside of your community that you could go to and learn from, and that there's other places you can visit.
All right, so let's do our objective and we'll talk about the lesson for today.
We're going to take a field trip to Verona, Italy to see the place where Romeo and Juliet lived.
I'm going to take you on this field trip under the water. Okay, you guys ready? Pick up your devices.
And look in your cardboard.
What is that?
I see a shark.
It allowed us to go somewhere we wouldn't normally be able to go.
Are we in China?
This is the Great Wall of China.
We got to see the place itself so we could actually understand what she was talking about.
How long would it take to walk the length of the Great Wall of China? So much more enriching than just showing them a picture or just having them read about it.
This device can actually make us go to places that we've never been before.
It brings the lesson to you.
You have to see it for yourself to believe it.
There's so much other places to see, so you know that it's never going to end.
Yeah, so classroom without walls, that has been, this has been something that has been spoken about in a lot of government initiatives, in a lot of futuristic educational plans. But I think the future, I mean, what was spoken about like 5-10 years ago is like we have arrived at where we kind of wanted to be, where like classroom without walls, you can bring your students outside the classroom while they are still inside the classroom, and you don't have to confine the content or the experience. Yeah, so this is a very good example of the learning experience. So like all this feedback that the students were telling you, like they could feel like they were there, they could see it instead of just reading about it or looking at static pictures. That is learning design. Oh, sorry, learning experience. So then we come to augmented reality, which is very similar to, I mean, for those of you who are not too sure, it's very similar to the idea of QR codes, where you link extended content to image trigger. Yeah, collaborative learning versus cooperative learning, what's the difference? So cooperative is like we do different parts and we merge it together. Collaborative is like we all do every part and we are discussing and we are critiquing and we are challenging each other in concepts like this. Learning analytics is another very important area, which is increasingly being built into assessment, digital assessments and learning platforms. So this gives very good, very automated. Using artificial intelligence, of course, gives the either teacher or the school leaders very good indications of how well a program or a instructional package is working for the students and whether there's results from it, and and gives them information or data to go forward. 360 story spheres. Have any of you heard of or seen 360 story spheres? No? Then I've got an example for you too.
In this video, you'll learn how to listen to a library. Now, in this story sphere, we have 13 hidden audio clips. Now, if you're just quiet a moment, we can hear some whispering in the background. There it is. So we've got two things going on here. One of them is the 360-degree photosphere of this particular library. And we can look right up to the ceiling, and we can look right to the ground. When we align one of these tracks, and I'll just do it now, you watch, and it loads and opens. When today fails to offer the justification for hope, tomorrow becomes the only grail worth pursuing. When today Now that will play as a loop of book quote 9. What you need to do is to listen to all of them by using a desktop like I'm doing, or you can do this on a tablet or a mobile. Now let me just go to, and there's a mixture here between children's fiction and adult fiction. Let's try this one, shall we? Notice this circle goes small and it pings. I'll eat you up, I love you so. And that will carry on like that. So there's 13 to choose, and this was a very short video on how to listen to a library.
Yeah, so building stories on story spheres is it is increasing in popularity again, largely shared on social medias, where you are describing certain crises or things like that. So they have a 360 video or an image even, and they have like some sentences at different parts of the picture. So all you need to do is either turn your phone, or you can just physically turn to see the different content at the different parts of the image or the video. Sorry, but the last one is self-directed learning. So self-directed learning is the final slide of my learning approaches, but it is again another very important area that we are striving to, as in instructional designers are striving to make possible self-directed learning, where student learns based on interest-based learning or preference-based learning. So all these learning approaches and theories that we covered earlier, who are we doing this for? We are actually doing this for our learners who are digital natives. So then the question, as teachers or instructional designers, are we digital natives or are we digital immigrants? What do you think? Yeah, I hear quite a number of immigrants, and yes, that's right. We are actually tech immigrants, okay, sorry, digital immigrants. And the reason why we are, I mean, for those of you who are not too sure, immigrants are people who have to do the adoption. Okay, we have to learn it. It comes to us as a brand new thing, and we are not used to it because we didn't learn that way. And for teachers, we usually teach the way we learned back then, right? So having to now do this new approach, having to learn how to use this, how to fully use for example, the overhead projector, the ceiling-mounted projector with an interactive whiteboard and with iPads or with your laptops, how to integrate these things to elevate the lesson objectives, that is something we have to overcome learning and adopt these technologies so that the learner is comfortable, they are learning in their preferred way compared to, compared to the way that we learned back when we were in school. But the funny thing was that the digital immigrants are the ones who created the very technologies that the digital natives are very comfortable with. However, we often hear ourselves saying, "I don't know how to use this," or "What is this?" And then we can't understand the craze, as we call it, of what digital natives are doing. But we are the ones who created it for them. Yeah, so for the 21st century learners or for the digital natives, these are the 4 critical skills which are identified as 21st century skills: critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration. It may sound very simple. I mean, most of us have been having these as our learning objectives and trying to build lesson activities around these areas. But yeah, so this has to continue, we have to continue with the effort because these are recognized as the 21st century learning skills, which is why you will be seeing a lot of increasing interest in things like robotics, coding, where students are able to unlock and create, think critically, think creatively, and things like that. So, in action, Yeah. So putting everything into action in our classroom. For many teachers, because there are just so many EdTech tools around, okay, due to the wealth of educational technology tools around, sometimes teachers are not too sure which one they should use to design for which activity, and sometimes it comes down to the very simple line of whether they want to take the effort to do it or not, because sometimes it's setting it up, or you may have designed something really, really very good, but on that day something is not working, or the cable is not working, the pin in the VGA cable is not working. You know, that kind of very minute things can kind of destroy that whole lesson idea and make the teacher feel like the effort was so wasted. Okay, so but however, like I said, it's something that we got to push on. So it comes with a lot of practice. You knowing where the problem is and how to easily troubleshoot. Do you think you can go and find a friend, or you know where to look for an alternative VGA or HDMI cable? Do you know whether the problem is with the projector, with the cable, or with your laptop? You know, this kind of things. So it really, really comes with a lot of practice to identify, instead of saying, I don't know, it's not working, so maybe next time I'm not going to try this, you know, or even the practice of sharing. If you think you have done something innovative, it's very good to share, to post about it, so that other teachers can ask, can find out, can learn. Because we other than learning through those digital blogs and things like that, we learn best from our peers in the same environment. That is really true. We learn from our colleagues who are in the same environment, facing the same challenges as us, because if they can do it, then we have this ray of hope, compared to seeing how this tech guru does it, right? Yeah, so we are like, yeah, wow, okay, nice, but when it comes to you, they're like, maybe not now, right? But if your friend is doing it, then most likely you can do it too. So usually for myself, when I'm designing my lessons, I usually have 3 questions. The first question being like a new level. Does this tool allow my students to create something they previously were not able to? Secondly, accessibility. Is the tool easily accessible for my students? And this translates to things like iPads. Okay, so in the DAS, we have 3 iPads in the classroom. In the English Language and Literacy main literacy program classrooms, we have 3 iPads per teacher, but usually we have about 4 to 5 students in a class. So there are 2 options. One thing is I design my lessons based on a sharing model, but that is something that's not really preferred by students. I mean, naturally, if every lesson you got to keep sharing iPads, then is who gets to click the button, right? So then you want to say, okay, maybe, you know, I have to make some effort to go and borrow from my colleagues, or, you know, find some way to get an additional device. So that takes a little bit of effort. I usually have to ask my center colleagues. Usually I will WhatsApp them, say who is not using iPads from this time to this time, and then I go and borrow it from them, and, you know, things like that. So because my whole point is accessibility, I don't want my student to just partner with someone and take the back seat and say, okay, you know, I'm just partnering you, but I'm okay with everything you do. That is not meeting the lesson objectives, and that is not participating, and the tool also becomes inaccessible to the student, because that is what I am implying to my student, that the tool is not accessible, you just watch, or one of you have to watch, you know, things like that. And last but not the least, is possibility of detraction. So is this tool, I mean, yeah, it's fascinating, it's very wow, like when you saw the 360, no, not 360, when you saw the virtual reality video, it's like all very wow and nice, but what is the learning objective? Do they learn, or are they just easily wowed and having fun and laughing, you know? So it is very important for a teacher to know that other than the novelty factor, other than wowing the students or even the parents or your school leaders and anybody, at the end of the day, is learning happening or not? Because that is our profession, that's our job, and that's what we are providing service, that's the service we are providing to our clients or to the students. And okay, I put this here because most of the teachers here would identify with Bloom's taxonomy. So on top of integrating technology, we are trying to elevate the lesson objectives. But having said that, I'm not saying that it's wrong if a lesson is designed at the lower levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. It is really, really depends on what task we are doing, and ultimately what is the objective. As long as the objectives are appropriately designed and the objectives are met through that series of instructional activities, then that's fine. But all that I'm advocating for is that from the level of remembering and understanding, it cannot be from the start of the year to the mid of the year still remembering and understanding. There must be some effort, okay, to go beyond that understanding into applying or even analyzing or things like that. So now I'm going to cover some examples from the DAS. Okay, so for us, we have been integrating technology since about 2013 onwards, but more so from the year of 2015, where we have deployed more than slightly more than 400 iPads to our different learning centers, and having distributed the iPads, it is still largely a very free-to-use kind of a model where the tech team does not really fix or lock down the iPad, so the teachers are able to explore the apps that they want to try out, and etc. So along these lines, we have now come to the stage of integrating virtual reality. So this is 2 screenshots that I have gotten here from our current project with Nanyang Technological University, NTU, where we are designing VR for presentation skills module. Okay, so all the student does is put on that VR goggles, and then the teacher decides whether the audience size is small or pretty large, okay, what type of room, and then the student would have prepared his script, right? So these are the earlier preparation. So the student would have prepared his script, and the script would appear on the screen where he's looking, so he does not have to look for the paper, okay? All he needs to do is just look a little bit lower and the prompt, his script will be there. And the system is also intuitive. It's built like, so if the student speaks very softly and the system decides that the person sitting at the end of the room will not be able to hear the student, then there will be a visual prompt for the student, like too soft. And if the student is not looking around too much, okay, it's just fixated to some part of the room, then it prompts the student to look around. Okay, so these are the learning experience points that we have taken note when we tried to design this, when we are designing this module. The next one that I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is a e-learning. This is an e-learning module. Okay, so this is actually designed in-house by myself and my tech colleagues. So I'm going to show you an example of what this particular module looks like. So this is about goal setting. So it's an e-learning module. It's a student-led, so the student can do this independently. So the student gets to click on each post-it notes to learn the different points. I think in total there are about 7 or 8 points. I can't remember now. I think 7 points. So we have made it interactive. We had made it a bit eye-catching and things like that. And there's also a template for the student to download and put on his content before he goes for his consultation with his teacher, either a face-to-face consultation or a online consultation. So this was designed in-house. We just got the software and we are doing all the modules by ourselves. This software is called Articulate 360. And the sub-software that I'm using under Articulate. This is called Storyline, but they have others as well. Okay. All right, and this example is my classroom actually, one of my class activities. We were learning Goldilocks and the Three Bears for 8-year-old students who refuse to read word-based stories. So we actually have a visual story.
Is making me hungry. I don't think anyone would mind if I went in for a quick taste. She opened the door to the cottage.
No, press.
Tap the picture to explore.
Press the porridge. Press the porridge bowl. Yeah, porridge. Press the sign. Press the sign.
Okay, wait, before I press some more, what did she do?
Smell.
She smelled, she also
Sniff.
sniffed. Yes, she sniffed. And what did she sniff?
Porridge.
The smell of
Yeah,
the
press
porridge.
Goldilocks. Press the sign. Press the sign.
The bear family.
No, press the door.
I think there's something on the door.
Hello? Anyone home? Mind if I come in? No? Then don't mind if I do.
Press the rooftop.
What do you think she's going to do? She knocked on the door.
Yeah.
So as you can see, right, it makes that one story very interesting, and you could see that unified voices, right? They are all like click this and click that, and they are all very interested. And I'm able to interject with a lot of questions, like what would you do if you were her? Would you go into the house? Would you not go into the house? You know, things like that. And the learning design, okay, so you see I always come back to the learning experience, right? So the designers of this activity, it was actually an online, actually you guys can, I mean, if you're interested, you can Google for, I think I just Google for interactive stories for interactive whiteboard. So there are many such stories that, you know, teachers can use on interactive surfaces. Other than myself clicking, I can also get the students to come in front and take a turn each to click on certain things, because other than the character, the other environments also kind of do some reaction, some sort of interaction. Like if you click on the signboard, then it says something, and each time they click it, the reaction is different. Like they don't have the same reaction, you know. So if I click it the second time, it might say something slightly different. Okay, so this goes on until the time where she goes to taste the porridge, and she tries to test the sofa and the bed and things like that. So that one story, we can actually chunk it into 2 or 3 sessions of about 15 to 20 minutes each, and everybody is fully engaged, and they have, you know, they are participating in questions, on thinking questions, rather than just focusing on the content and answering direct comprehension questions. And this is my final slide, and this is about one of my students. Okay, when she was with me that time, she was in primary 2, if I'm not wrong, which is about 8 years old, and she has done her own digital story. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly play a very short clip. Yeah, so it's actually, it goes page by page, and she has built this story, and the words are her own, and you know, so now she's actually reading her story to her classmates, and at the end of it, she actually had a Q&A quiz for those who were paying attention. So this is actually a very simple activity. I could have asked them to do it on paper and pen, you know, given them boxes like first part, second part, or story mountain, or any kind of other kind of story writing frameworks. But I find that whenever I do that, when I tell them to draft their lesson on paper using pencil or pen, there's usually an initial reluctance. Okay, they are all like, must we really do this? Okay, yes, you got to really do this. Then they come up with a very simple story with 1 or 2 lines or even phrases, or some are just words, okay, just 1 or 2 words. But when I tried this, because these characters, these images are given in the website, they just got to choose the appropriate pictures to develop a particular story, or even sometimes it's not even a story, it's just an action. I just tell them, okay, you just come up for me with 4 pages, just something depicting very happy or very sad, or some kind of emotion, feeling depressed, and then they find appropriate images. And even though the images are not exactly appropriate, because when I say appropriate, it's like apt. They then have to develop the story to justify why this character is feeling the way the character is supposed to feel. Okay, so it's very encouraging because they all want to see each other's story. They all want to see what they each have designed, and they love the presentation time. They just like to come in front and say what they have put together. All right, so if you're looking at this and you're saying, hey, how come there's like some punctuation issues and things like that? My objective here is not on the punctuation yet, although I will correct them later on. But my objective here is to get them to draft an idea first. Because if I were to focus on the little nitty-gritty punctuation issues, then my student is not going to, be so interested to do such an activity the next time, because they will think my teacher is going to like pinpoint on these kind of things. But my objective here is the idea generation. Okay, so that is my last slide. But before I end, very quickly, for teachers who are designing instructional activities with technology, there are a few things. One thing is practice. Practice makes, I wouldn't say perfect, because you can't really reach perfect when you are talking about integrating technology. But as you go along, you become more competent, you become more confident, you are able to understand why some things work, some things don't work, either with the students or with their environment. Okay, you'll be able to in your head have backup plans. If this fails, then I can do something else about it, because your confidence increases. And secondly, you also have to learn to identify student needs. Sometimes the activities are very fantastic and very exciting, but do they meet the students' learning needs or not? And or are you just designing it because you will make your students very happy and no behavioral issues and things like that? Yeah. So. So these are just the 2 very general tips that I have for teachers who are designing lessons with instructional technology, and I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.